Hey guys, this is Zane here, back at it with another episode of Watching Monster House every single day of the month with friends because I want them to. I think I got it down confidently there. And as with most days that have actually occurred this month, I'm doing this by myself. But this is actually probably a topic that is best left off by myself anyways, so I don't feel too bad about it, and no one can tell me to feel bad about it anyways. And I'm still waiting on a response from Gil in regards to the questions I sent him, so hopefully I might have those in for tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then I should have someone come on and watch it with me, and then we'll discuss a little bit more, because we are coming up to the last couple days here. Realistically, if I was going with just the exact days of when did I start? April 22nd or something like that, all the way to May 22nd, I'd be done in like 2 days, also including like those Mondays that I took off. But I was thinking at the beginning that I'm like, you know what, I'll make up for those days that I missed, and well, here I am. I'm making up for the days that I missed by still doing it. So I'll just be a little bit more continued, and ideally I shouldn't have to take any more Mondays off because I'll be pretty much finished everything by that point. And I'm still trying to decide whether or not I want to do something for the last day of the stream, so day 30 or 31. I actually haven't decided if I'll do 30 or 31 days, but if anyone that's listening to this would like to potentially weigh in on what I should do for the last day, shoot me a message. But my thinking for right now is I set up a Discord or a small Discord group, and I stream the movie through there. So if people don't have Netflix, they can still watch it with other people. And then I just do a entire recording session, all with, I don't know, like everyone that's in the Discord. So I think that could be a fun way of doing it, because I can get live reactions, discuss some stuff that happened in the movie. My only issue with doing it that way is I don't want to risk copyright. So what I might end up actually doing after all of that is just one big amalgamation of discussing Monster House after the movie is all done, with whoever is in there at the same time. And I think that might be a fun way of doing it, probably the best way of doing it. But if you don't agree with that, or you have another idea in mind, give me a shout. And I'm still going to try and get in contact with a couple other people who worked on the movie. So if I do get in contact with them, I might put out the odd episode at a random occasion. But all things considered, we've pretty much covered almost every single little bit of information that this movie has to offer, which is wild. You know, there's a lot more to it than I expected. I mean, I've seen the movie, of course, so many times, but when you really get down into it, and when you start really looking for information, you'd be surprised with just how much you can find, and how much stuff is not just readily available directly at the surface, which is cool. It makes doing some research and whatnot worth the time and fun. And for all I know, a lot of the information that I've covered in this podcast has probably either hardly been touched or has not been covered whatsoever at all. So some of this is almost for like historical moments or something like that. We're making history here, folks, and I think that's what matters most. Also, keep talking with a little bit more of an upbeat song in the background, weirdly enough, makes things all a little bit easier for me. And I'm not trying to go nice and slow and soothing. We're high energy. We're going. But yeah, as I was saying, we're making history. It's weird to have a movie like this exist, and you know, it came, it went, and it left basically no impact on anything. Have you seen Monster House merch? I haven't. I don't even know if a Blu-ray copy of this movie really exists, let alone a 4K. Like, it came as a DVD, maybe even a VHS. Soundtrack available on probably just basic CD and not even on like vinyl. That would be sick to have as vinyl. But posters, never saw any posters except for the one that came in with the book itself. There's just nothing. It's so weird. Like a movie that does pretty good in theaters, and you know, it's animated pretty good for its time. Even it's good in general. But it leaves no lasting impact on anything around it and has no influence on pop culture whatsoever. It blows my mind. It kind of dodged all of that era. And it makes me wonder if the movie was released these days, or like this day and age, if you get crazy weird fans about it. Like, I don't like to consider myself a crazy weird fan about this. I just have a weird interest with this movie and a lot to talk about with it. I'm not trying to convince people that it's a great movie anymore, because it is. And if you don't think it's a great movie, then hey, that's okay. That's just your opinion, man. But I've gone like 6 minutes here, just rambling, and I really need to stop doing that. But you know what? I can say that every time, and even when I get to the end of it, I'm still gonna ramble. And I'm assuming a lot of people out there are probably tired of hearing about Monster House, but I appreciate you still listening. Anyways, actually getting on to what we're going to be discussing in today's episode is the differentiation between if Monster House is a haunted house film or a monster film. And I'm going to go through the genres of both of them, sort of some history between them, examples, whatnot, so you can get a good basis as to exactly what type of movie Monster House is. And we all know it's an animated movie, so I don't have to go over that. I've already talked about the animation enough. And first things first that I want to talk about, I had this discussion with one of my friends, not on one of the episodes, but in just Discord talking about the movie, because that comes up a lot. I promise I'm not always bringing it up, but bringing it up. Anyways, so one of the questions someone had was if the movie passed the, I believe the Bechdel test, the Bechdel test. And that is asking whether a work features at least two women who talk to each other about something other than a man. The requirement that the two women must be named is sometimes also added. And you can go through, oh god, I don't know how many movies, and they do not pass the Bechdel test. I don't think Alien even passes the Bechdel test. And a lot of the time, this isn't inherently a bad thing, but a big reason why the Bechdel test exists is for proper or good representation of women in media. Because a lot of the time, as you can guess, women are misrepresented in media, and it sucks. Because women are amazing. Like, every woman's great. But, you know, sometimes you get a lot of times in movies where they're implemented not so great, and it's not their fault. It's whoever's making the movie, it's their fault. Just go yell at them about it. But some good examples of this being two women, like maybe a main character woman talking to a random side character woman talking about their boss that is a man or something like that. Or you get a lot of side characters that only talk about a specific, like the main character of the story or something like that. And it's kind of like lazy writing in that way. Women aren't always talking about men, just like men aren't always talking about women, except in a lot of situations men have the conversations about literally anything else, but it's almost a rare occasion where women have conversations about that in movies, which sucks. We do need better representation of just, I don't know, people in general when it comes to movies. But this movie does indeed pass the Bechdel test with, I wouldn't say flying colors, but it does it quite well. So, the beginning of the movie with the mom, who's one of the few female characters in the movie, does not pass the Bechdel test because she talks to no other women, and she basically only talks about DJ. So she's out of the picture. Enter Z. Z doesn't talk to the mom, so that is out of the picture. And then Jenny comes along, and they have the entire discussion about Westbrook Prep, selling candies, the life lesson that Z gives about the man with the tattoos, give him his order, not your number, and how people of the house left her so and so much money. So just that is, I think it's the only conversation in the movie between the two girls, but it counts unless you're also considering Jenny and Jenny's mom talking on the phone. They don't necessarily. I don't think they talk about DJ and Chowder whatsoever in that movie. She just mentions where she is. So if you count that, it also sort of counts. Jenny's mom kind of has a name, which is what, Mrs. Bennett. And then, but yeah, Jenny and Z have the decent conversation, which it introduces Jenny's character, which she has a name, and they have a conversation that doesn't involve men. And there we go. So the movie passes the Bechdel test. I'm curious to see what other tests exist out there that we may be able to prove that the movie passes. Because the way the movie is constructed, it does surprisingly well with passing a lot of different tests. It falls under a ton of tropes, but hey, almost every movie does. So, moving on to the actual topic, haunted houses and monster movies. So you might be sitting here being like, so what exactly is a haunted house? Like, or what makes a haunted house movie a haunted house movie? And there's a kind of a lot to it. So the genre's been around for pretty much centuries, not specifically in movies, but in media, like literature and whatnot. I guarantee everyone's at one point believed that ghosts are real, and huge majority of people probably have had some experience in their life that they could probably attribute to paranormal or the supernatural. So if you have these thoughts now, I guarantee you Uncle Grugnaw the Knuckle Dragger from 2300 BC, the fire went out at some point and he was gonna starve to death and he heard a noise. Uncle Grugnaw probably believed that it was something, because he probably didn't really know what the wind was, so it's something out of his comprehension. And then you could trace that all the way back to who knows, to right now. There's Gothic media typically is the highest representation for haunted house literature that I believe. Liam touched upon it a good amount in our episode, which I believe might have been episode 16? 16 or 15, it's one of those times. If you're looking on Spotify, it is titled Real Friendship Hours, I think. Oh god, no, that is not it. That's the one with Casper. Liam's episode is Gothic literature is an art form. That's the one. And I'm pretty sure that is day 16, because I think Casper's is 15. Anyways, so he touched upon it a good amount in that one, if you'd like to learn a little bit more from that, because I sure learned a lot, and helped me base this episode around it. So, typically, in ghost lore, haunted houses are inhabited by spirits connected with that of the property, usually involving either people murdered within the house, homicides, suicides, or any other thing kind of happening. So, for classifying movies into haunted house movies, it's sometimes really difficult to differentiate that from ghost movies. Because realistically, all haunted house movies are typically ghost movies, but not all ghost movies are haunted house movies. So the little gray area in the Venn diagram of the two, where they don't mesh in the middle, is what I'm going to try and differentiate here. And it's more difficult than you'd think. There's not a whole lot of great examples as to what makes something a haunted house movie. I looked, so I think I've come up with a distinguishing couple factors. So, what I think is, for a haunted house movie to be a haunted house movie, the spirit or spirits need to be specifically tied to the house. So they can't leave the property. It's not like some horror movie where someone walks into the haunted house and then they're being followed by spirits or something of the sort. I believe it has to be secluded within the house and property itself. And most of the time it's nice to have more than one ghost, but there's so many examples of haunted house movies with a single ghost, so that's kind of not really worth it. Basically, the biggest point is spirit has to be tied to the house, and that's kind of it. It doesn't come from an outwardly thing, it comes from within the house itself. So you get movies like Insidious that make it hard to consider it to be a haunted house movie. I don't believe it is, because I think the evil spirit is outwardly from the house itself rather than having it occur in the house. My memory might be totally off for that though. And another example being Paranormal Activity, which the entire movie takes place in the house, and there's a spirit or spirits within the house. But I don't think any of these spirits are actually attributed to the house itself, so it's more considered a ghost movie than it is a haunted house movie. I think now that we've got that basis solidified, I'll give you a couple examples of some haunted house movies. I was looking at a couple lists, and they didn't classify The Shining as a haunted house movie because they're like, it's a hotel, not a house. And I'm pretty sure I'd consider The Shining to sort of be a ghost movie. Or not ghost movie, a haunted house movie. I think it would be considered a haunted house movie. Just like, what, 1408? I think also 1408 would be, because it's a hotel room. Like, it counts. Surely it does. Although I actually can't even remember a lot of the premise for that. I should have done maybe a little bit more research on some of these. But that one actually just randomly came to mind thinking about hotels. That was a good movie. Samuel L. Jackson, I think. But other examples being A Haunting in Connecticut, Hausu, or House for its English name. Hausu, I believe, is the Japanese or Korean name of it, I think. Beetlejuice, The Haunting of Hill House, Crimson Peak, Amityville Horror, and Woman in Black. And going off of that, haunted house movies don't exactly have to be horror. Like, they don't always have to be scary. The paranormal and whatnot is 90% of the time attributed to something being spooky or scary, because I mean, it's out of your realm of comprehension, so you can't really discuss it all that well. And it's supposed to be scary because it's something out of your control, and that is pretty much one of the most terrifying things. You don't know what to do. Someone probably doesn't believe you, and you're in mortal danger most of the time. But there's a couple, albeit pretty few, amounts of haunted house movies that are not centered around actually being scary. A couple of which are Haunted Mansion featuring Eddie Murphy. That's like an old Disney classic. Haunted House, Beetlejuice. Some people might not even consider Beetlejuice to be a haunted house movie, but it definitely is. Actually, it's one of the best comedy-ish related haunted house movies you can get. One of the issues is, since the people that owned the house didn't die within the house, you might consider it to be a ghost movie, but the people are pretty much stuck to the confines of the house themselves, and when the new people move in, they can haunt them. I would say that more so considers it to be a haunted house movie rather than a ghost movie. Same thing with there's Casper the Friendly Ghost. That's a ghost movie, not a haunted house movie. I don't think I remember the house being haunted itself, and it was just Casper and the other creepy ghosts who exist, whatever their names are. That was a weird movie. But another example of a haunted house movie is Monster House. So it covers the basis of the spirit being tied specifically to the house, the event for the spirit involved right on the property. It was accidental, and the spirit had vengeance in mind, or revenge. I think it was more so vengeance, not revenge. And it's like ill-wishing on the people around it, except for Nevercracker. So it covers a lot of the good steps. Also, it's a house itself, so like it absolutely counts for a haunted house movie. I had my doubts about it because I think of specifically ghosts, but Constance isn't really a ghost. Spirits and ghosts, I think, are two different things, but Constance's spirit is possessing the house. Therefore, it's the monster house, so she's haunting it, just in ways that a lot of other movies haven't quite done it. Poltergeist is also another haunted house type movie, even though you don't outwardly see any of the ghosts inherently, which is kind of cool. So, just like you pretty much don't see Constance's spirit up until the very end of the movie, she is like the house, and she's like in possession of it, and she's stuck to the property for the most part. So I believe that it is a very prime example of a monster or a haunted house movie. And when I was doing some research for this, it showed up on the list of haunted house movies. So take that. It doubly counts in that way. So moving on. So we're going to be classifying into monster movies. So what exactly is a monster movie? For this instance specifically, and I'm pretty sure this is really broad, but I think the general consensus for classifying monster movies is movies featuring giant animals, kaijus, mutants, supernatural beings, aliens, other things like that. You kind of get the good gist of it. They are typically horror, sci-fi, or fantasy, as are the haunted house movies. And for me personally to consider a monster movie, the main monster typically has to have ill intent for the most part, and I don't know, have to have a good amount of presence on the screen for a majority of it. So I'm thinking E.T. I don't think it's considered a monster movie. I don't really like E.T. as it is. He's kind of creepy and gross. And he's nice. The whole point is trying to get E.T. back home. And I think that just it's not inherently a monster movie, it's something else entirely, like an alien movie. There's a lot of movies that do the whole sending the alien back home thing. So I think it sort of falls under that. Star Wars isn't a monster movie. There's aliens and different races and stuff like that, but I wouldn't consider any of them to be monster movies. Those are space movies with monsters in them. Although I think it might be racist to consider Star Wars races to be monsters. I don't know if that's the case. I don't want to get in trouble for that, so I'll stop. And other movies like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, I don't consider to be monster movies. They are like supernatural. They're beings with crazy strength and whatnot. So you get stuff like, pretty sure Freddy Krueger has some superpowers or something of the sort. I've never really seen Nightmare on Elm Street, so I can't weigh in too well for that. But movies like Friday the 13th, Jason, he's a human. He's sort of like immortal. He's almost like a monster in and of itself, but he's still a human. And that's slasher films can fall in a weird category for monster movies. And now I'm feeling like I need to make that like alignment chart of like X and Y axis, so you can like do all these different classifications of monster and stuff movies, because a lot of these have similar stuff in common. They meet in certain areas, but the things that differentiate them specifically from the other ones are more so what I'm trying to talk about. And yeah, as with I mentioned earlier, they're typically horror and whatnot. So the genre, as with haunted houses, has also been around for pretty much forever. A lot of folklore has a basis on monsters and unknown things, whether it be things like Mothman, Bigfoot, Jersey Devil, Chupacabra, Fresno Nightcrawlers, or the Flatwoods Creature. It's usually someone either... I'm not going to confirm nor deny that things like that exist. I'd like to imagine that there's stuff out there kind of like that, because it makes things a little bit interesting, but at the same time it's scary. So people like thinking that they see things and it sticks with them, usually attributed to some weird happenstance happening. So I like to imagine that haunted house stuff has probably been around roughly as long as monster stuff has. And I don't know. they're both very similar in their own ways, but different in their own ways as well. And a lot of monster movies as well aren't outwardly horror, but I'll get into those a little bit later. So, some examples of monster movies, although I am very certain that I really don't have to go over this, but I like to give a couple examples, and for those listening and are looking for monster movies that you might not know about, I'll list a good couple, and I'm also realizing now that a lot of these are movies that are pretty popular, but you know what, it's okay. So, some monster movies. Godzilla, of course. If you want a more specifically super actual monster movie that is actually a little bit terrifying, Shin Godzilla is one of the better of all of the Godzilla movies. Objectively, one of the best monster movies out there, I think. It's done really, really well if you don't mind subtitles. Pacific Rim. Please watch the first one and not the second one. The second one's god-awful. It's not worth the time. The first one's still great. Cabin in the Woods. The Host, which I haven't seen, but that one's done by Bong Joon-ho. And I've heard absolutely fantastic stuff about it. And all of his other movies are so good anyways. Tremors, which I've brought up a couple times on the podcast. Attack the Block. The Thing. The Mysterians, which is an old one, and where Mogera from one of the Godzilla movies is based on. I think it's the Space Godzilla movie. The Fly, The Descent, and Jaws. It's hard to even consider Jaws to be a monster movie because it's a shark. But then you get movies like Anaconda and Lake Placid, which are monster movies, so they count. And this also is making me realize that I would really like to do a monster movie discussion. That's for another time. So, most of the movies that I listed above are horror movies, and not all of the monster movies have to be that way. Just like with haunted house movies, there's a lot of comedy or lightheartedness to go with them. So movies like, I don't know, The Monster Gang, I think it's called. Oh god, now I'm having a hard time thinking of monster movies that are sort of for kids. But there's a lot. Monsters Inc. even counts. It's a good genre that can cover a wide variety of bases and is most typically used for horror, but you can go any which way direction with it, which is really neat. So, Monster House, yet again, excellent monster movie. When the house is a big, massive threat to the children, it's actively imposing on the neighborhood. The kids are scared of it. There's even like city folklore about the house, I'm assuming. And there's just a lot going on with it. It turns into a full monster at the end of the movie. What else do I gotta say? So, wondering how can Monster House be both a haunted house movie, but at the same time also be a monster movie? And I write it's simple. It's kind of not, but it kind of is at the same time. So the movie can easily be split into two different things, depending on at what point in the movie you're watching. The first 3/4 of the movie, absolutely, it's a haunted house movie. When the kids are thinking that it's haunted by Nevercracker's soul, which I didn't even touch upon earlier, they're trying to go inside and do all that jazz. And then they eventually realize that the house is itself alive and isn't just being possessed, and that they have to go take out the heart. Now from that point on, it's a monster movie. They're planning to take out this monster using a weak point that it has, and Skull even gives, or if they went with it, the Encyclopedia of Monsters, the house is an example in there. So, it's there. It counts. And then just the last little bit of the movie, it goes full on monster / action, and it's chasing them down, it's coming back from the grave, it's terrifying. Not actually super scary in and of itself, but it's terrifying to the kids at the very least. So the movie blends itself in a nice way that breaks both the haunted house genre and the monster genre. Another example of a movie that does a weird but I feel well done tonal shift in the middle of the movie is Evil Dead 2. It goes from this, of course, a horror movie into a campy monster sort of movie midway through. And I love every second of it. I can't really think of too many other great examples at the moment, but Evil Dead 2 is another great example of a horror movie that transitions into something campy, which is almost exactly how Monster House does it, which is great. I think this basically covers everything. I mean, I hit the time surprisingly easier and faster than I would have expected to. So, this has been Zane, as per usual. This was actually a really fun episode to do. I wasn't too sure of what I was going to talk about, but I mean, I got some research done. I'm up to 8,000 words in the doc. And yeah, this was really fun. I feel like my monster movie knowledge is significantly better than haunted house movies. It probably shows. But hope you guys are having a good one. I'll be back here tomorrow, as with per usual. Sorry I took the Monday off again. Kind of just, you need a break sometimes. But anyways, I'll see you back here tomorrow. Hope you guys are doing well. Bye.